Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Tanner Watt. I'm a municipal energy specialist with Local Authority Services, and I'm joined today by a couple of my colleagues. We've got Ainsley Murdoch, who's Client Relations Manager. Ainsley covers Northern Ontario for the group buying program, whereas I cover the South. We also have Jesse Patnaud, who's Manager of National Partnerships with RMA, Rural Municipalities of Alberta. They're one of the sister organizations that we have worked with on the group buying program across Canada. We will be recording this webinar and we'll send out a follow-up email with a copy of the slide deck and a link to the video in a follow-up email in the next day or two. And we will be doing questions and answer at the end. There's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen in the Zoom toolbar. If you click on that, it opens up a question and answer box where you can type in your question, and we will go through those at the end of the presentation. The group buying program itself was launched a bit over a year ago. The goal is to help municipalities save money on the things that they buy every day and to save them the time of doing a procurement process exactly the same as what their neighbors are doing. So rather than each municipality doing the same RFP 400 times, we do it once for you. So with that, I will hand it off to Jesse to talk about total cost of ownership.
Thanks. You can hear me okay, Tanner?
Yep, loud and clear.
Awesome. So thanks for having me on today. My name is Jesse Patton, as Tanner had mentioned. Actually pretty new to the RMA. Spent 20-some years in the dealership industry helping customers like yourself move earth for quite some time. A little bit about myself. I got into trades, as a young man, about 20 years old. Got a parts certification, did some sales through dealerships as well. But really moved into the contract space with a large Caterpillar dealership about 5 or 6 years ago before coming over to the RMA. And it was through there that I got a designation as a maintenance management professional. So really looking at reliability-centered maintenance, root cause analysis, what causes failures and why they happen and how do you prevent them moving forward. Today I'm going to talk about cost of ownership. I'm going to try to keep things as agnostic as possible, but as I'm a heavy equipment guy, I tend to lean that way. So I'll try to keep it generic as possible, but really my experience is in the heavy equipment sector. Just a quick story on why total cost of ownership is important. I think it was about 10, 15 years ago. We put a very robust engine into Northern Alberta, designed for gas compression in the energy sector. And we had a very robust maintenance strategy designed with the OEM to kind of keep that engine going. It had a premium, that engine, so it was one of the more expensive ones. But we bought it based on the total cost of ownership being lower. So we started running this engine in Northern Alberta, and we found we had some challenges with the engine. They kept dropping valves into the cylinder heads. Anybody who's familiar with gas compression engines, that's not good for anything. So we did some root cause analysis and failure analysis and determined it all boiled down to like a $3 lifter clip that was holding that valve in place failing. So we added that into our maintenance strategy at 1,000 hours, and we got everything we wanted out of the engine from the OEM as designed, paying that premium. Often it is good to look at total cost of ownership just based on the fact that some products have a higher premium or purchase price, whether it be an ERP, piece of equipment, motor grader, truck, you get cost per kilometer on that kind of stuff. But it's important to look past that initial purchase price just in order to, I guess, understand what that total life cycle is going to be. You might pay a premium on a piece of equipment or hardware or software to begin with, as it's a more robust, piece of equipment, hardware, or software to begin with, having lower owning and operating costs over the span of that duration of life. So it's important, I guess, to look at the entire life cycle process versus the initial purchase price. Stay away from shock, all that kind of stuff, because like I said, you might have a higher price and it might have lower owning and operating costs to begin with. So what is the total cost of ownership? I just kind of went through a lot of it. It's, how do you acquire it? What's the operation? Are you going to need personnel? Are there going to be software upgrades, documentation, continuous training for technicians, operators, reps, anything along those lines? But it's really cost of ownership, that places a single value on the complete life cycle of the capital purchase. I'm not sure if the group was aware, but you can generally request life cycle costing when you're getting a quote on any kind of capital purchase, or if you're putting anything out to tender. There are generally 3 key components of total cost of ownership. The first one is, like I mentioned, acquisition costs. So it's the acquisition or physical hardware costs includes equipment, property before taxes, but after commissions, discounts, purchasing incentives, and closing costs. Sometimes this will include one per equipment or upgrades necessary to installation or utilization of the assets. So if you're putting some sort of extra technology on the equipment to help it run smoother and more efficiently, take operator error out of the equation, those can be additional costs as well. As I mentioned, it's quite important to stay away from the sticker shock value of acquisition costs. There are a lot of tools out there that groups can use to really determine what that overall cost of ownership will be. A lot of people or companies that are selling you equipment or any kind of hardware or software will be able to calculate that for you, as I've mentioned. There's lots of tools out there as well. There's calculators online that you can get. There's simple formulas. I'll kind of go over those here in a minute. But all that information is available to the end user to make sure that they make the correct purchase. Operating costs. So in my career, I've managed, I think at the high point, about 2,700 preventative maintenance contracts. We also manage some total cost of repair contracts. So planned component replacement, if people want to get into that depth of replacement. But most, people rely on warranty and having a robust preventative maintenance strategy as their operating costs. But there are things that go into there as well. Like, if you need an operator to run that operator is going to need training, continuous training. If you need multiple operators to spell shifts. Sorry, just getting a drink of water. Warranties as well, right? So warranties should be factored into the total cost of ownership. I know that generally gets put on the capital side of things. And then if you plan to rebuild equipment as well. So, I know a lot of equipment is designed to be rebuilt in nature. A lot of people don't generally take it that way, but you can factor in a rebuild to get a second life out of a piece of equipment and an operating cost as well. And then you can also put that on the capital side of things if required. Personnel costs is another key component of total cost of ownership. If you have to hire additional administrative staff to manage any kind of repair strategy or run a computer system or have training on a computer system or actually even anybody to maintain a computer system. So personnel is pretty important in that aspect. Like I mentioned, you can have support personnel to the equipment. So a lot of, I'm sure a lot of you have technicians in-house that maybe are doing some of your preventative maintenance already. Maybe firing, doing some component replacement, changing starters, alternators, things like that to keep everything running. You actually might need a facility to house the equipment. So fire trucks come to mind there, and firefighters. So there's a key component of total cost of ownership if you have to have a house and everything to house the equipment and all that kind of stuff, and then actually the operator itself. Ongoing training should really be handled by the dealer that sold you that piece of equipment. I mean, in my opinion, if there's new technology in place, that should be provided to the end user free of charge. But you might want to factor in for that or any kind of troubleshooting. Sometimes you're going to need software programs to help repair things. I think everybody with tech tools from dealerships. Everything's pretty sophisticated nowadays. Generally have to plug in some sort of laptop or computer system to even diagnose even a pickup truck these days. So as that technology increases, it's important to maintain training and education on that aspect of things. So worst case scenario is you send somebody out to fix something, they don't have the tools to do it. And I think we've all experienced that, and get a little frustrating at the time. Real simple formula for calculating a total cost of ownership. I had mentioned previously there are a lot of tools online that you could use to help you do this for you. So there's Excel calculators out there. I know in a previous role I had at Finning, we actually provided life cycle costing to support machine sales. So such as yourselves or and you piece of equipment could actually request what that life cycle cost would be over the duration of a set period of time. We would always have a caveat that could be plus or minus 20% given just given how things flow over the lifespan of a piece of equipment, but we could get pretty close to support that machine sales. So I do encourage you, if anyone has to make a capital purchase of any kind, and even if it's an ERP, a new computer system, if you're buying hardware for schools, new computers, things like that, just talk to the person you're dealing with and ask them what life cycle costing looks like over a period of time to get that true price in order before you make that purchase. And like I said, most people are pretty keen to provide you that because it supports their sale, and they feel that they have the best product and the best owning and operating costs to do it. So here's a simple formula for calculating total cost of ownership. You take your purchase price of whatever it is you're buying. If you do have a trade-in price, if that's applicable, or a buyback, you can factor that in as well. You can get total maintenance costs from the dealer. There are some cool spreadsheets out there. I know Caterpillar has one. I believe John Deere has one. I know Volvo has one from my experience in that area. Ford can give you the cost per kilometer of any one of their vehicles. Actually, the F-150 is the cheapest cost per kilometer out there right now. So I see a lot of F-150 out in the world. But you can request where you make capital purchase. They should be happy about that to you. Maximum repair costs. So if you know what needs to be done, just thinking about maybe like a gas compression engine or power generation engine for a hospital or something like that, there's certain repairs that are going to need to be done before that piece of equipment is written off for no further use. You might need to do a top end overhaul, maybe a bottom end overhaul, things like that, but you factor that into your total cost of ownership outside of your maintenance costs. So, if you know you're going to have an extensive repair, you can bring that in at that time. But yeah, you just factor that in. You factor that into your total cost of purchase, and away you go. Some of these calculators out there, they do have all this stuff available in it. If you do need to factor in a major repair, sometimes they can recommend a major repair just kind of based on benchmarking. But most of these dealerships have these tools out there and readily available to either build it for you or have you do it yourself. I mentioned earlier, if there's any salvage, scrap, buyback value, that can be factored in there as well. So you basically take those top 5 things, do the math down on the bottom and divide it by your hours or period of ownership, and that'll give you cost per hour over the life cycle. Pretty straightforward. I do have some calculators I can send out to Tanner if he wants to share afterwards, but like I said, just do a quick Google search and you should be able to find everything you need. So once again, I don't know if anybody can tell, but I have had to sell on a premium price point a lot in my life. So I do focus a lot on value versus. You need a really good look on what whoever is selling you what you're buying can provide to you as a overall customer service experience, I guess. If you look strictly at price alone, I don't want to say you're going to get what you pay for. There's a lot of people out there that have very conscientious price points and are able to support their sale quite well. But if you take that purchase price, if it's a little higher, but you get lower owning and operating costs throughout the duration of that purchase, you're kind of better off. So if I could, just reiterate one point out today, just really take a good look at what that total cost will be over the lifespan of that purchase before you make your decision. So race to the bottom is generally not the best thing. I know everybody's price conscientious, especially given the nature of the world today and spending restrictions and so forth. But yeah, it's important to look at the holistic view versus just the purchase price. Sticker shock can definitely drive those decisions, but yeah, it's good to look at the whole thing. Really back in the 80s, kind of, I guess, total cost of ownership came about. A lot of computer systems, enterprise resource planning systems were going into businesses. And, there's a huge capital expenditure to do that. But people started quickly to determine, like, there's costs outside of just this initial purchase price. And, therefore, we need to look at what the total cost of ownership would be versus the initial purchase price. So there's a really big difference between purchase price and long-term cost. You want to look at this for any kind of capital investment you're doing, whether it be buildings, vehicles, computers for schools, an ERP system, any kind of major expenditure. You can also look at lease versus purchase. Generally when you're leasing a piece of equipment, a pickup truck like vehicle, on-highway gravel truck, anything along those lines, your total cost will be factored into that price. So you can get your maintenance put into your lease. You can get, obviously your warranty would be included in there. But that helps you set that price. So you would know that if I made this capital expenditure, I have this one fixed cost because I'm on a lease, and that's all I need to worry about. And that really aids in budgeting planning. A lot of work we've done over the years in regards to contracts is just to help people budget, right? So if I'm bidding on a job, or if there's a job in question and I need to know what it's going to cost me to run that job, you can do things like, how much am I going to use? How many liters of oil am I going to burn? How many maintenance packages am I going to need? Do I need a technician on site? But it all helps making that decision when you're bidding that job, or if you have to job in order to do that. You can also assist in your vendor selection if you're happy with a robust strategy from a certain vendor that aids things quite easily for you. As Tanner mentioned previously, important to go to tender, but everything has been tendered on your behalf through these programs. So if there is like a robust life cycle strategy you're comfortable with, and one of the programs fits your bill, you're able to do that. That's already all factored into there. But yeah, it's a good asset to have when you're making your vendor selections. That's kind of it, folks. And I know I've been talking about 20 minutes or so, but I'd really like to open it up to questions. Like I said, I'm definitely more experienced on the heavy equipment side of things, but I'll try to answer your questions as best as possible. Hopefully there's something you got out of the talk today. And if you need anything, please don't ever hesitate to ask.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jesse. This is Ainsley Murdoch speaking now. So I just wanted to say before we get into Q&As, I wanted to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule again to participate in this webinar. And just as a reminder, Tanner and I are here to support members and providing continued services at this time. So we do encourage you to reach out to Tanner or myself to set up a meeting or conference call with your team. So we can review all your unique procurement requirements, and we can outline the program benefits in further detail. So we'll take a look at some questions that have come through, and we'll do our best to answer them. One of the questions we have is, how would someone incorporate TCO into their procurement? Is there any way to hold vendors to the maintenance costs down the road after the purchase has been made?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mentioned earlier, there's generally two aspects you can follow when you're making a capital purchase. So you can request, I guess maybe more request pricing, which we always refer to as that plus or minus 20%. If the purchase got really, really close to, I guess, finalizing, we would firm that pricing up just kind of based on more specifications that the member customer had provided us. So From that point, we would feel pretty comfortable being, saying that we would be within 5% of that quote. And then at times we would write into certain contracts. If we were above quote, we would talk about that. If we were below quote, we would do some profit sharing in that aspect to make sure that whoever made that purchase felt comfortable. It's pretty general to get within 5% of that overall maintenance costs. If you made that agreement at 5% and somebody came in at 25, I definitely think that there would be opportunity to have a conversation with leadership of that organization to get that fixed.
Okay, great. Jesse, if you want to maybe provide more clarity as to the RFP process and how total cost of ownership is incorporated into the RFPs we do. I know you touched on it a little, but do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, I just think you can request that. So yeah, there are certain that have been tendered on your behalf already. To get the total cost of ownership and life cycle costing, I would recommend you work with whoever your sales personnel is, because if you get a price for a grader, that's generally the price for the grader, and it doesn't include any maintenance aspects, but you can get those maintenance aspects to understand what I guess your overall cost of ownership would be.
Okay, great.
I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, just with regards to the actual RFPs that we've done on behalf of the municipalities, kind of how that's incorporated. So I think you're relating it, more to the sales reps, right? That's where this is kind of that discussion comes in.
Yeah, and I mean, as we continue to work with vendors, and I'm more on the vendors relation team, so I deal with the vendors quite a bit. We're trying to get to that total cost of ownership aspect. So if you want to look at a Deere grader or Volvo excavator, it's a piece of Caterpillar equipment, we're trying to get to the point when you look at the either the Sourcewell contract or through any other pre-tendered aspect, it should have a blurb in there on what it should cost you to run that equipment over that frame of time. So we're working towards that. It's going to take some work to get there. A lot of way of thinking needs to be changed, I guess, but those conversations are being had.
Okay, great. One other question just came through here. Is there any opportunity for LAS to facilitate a benchmarking study to solicit total cost of ownership data from its members, i.e. operating costs per hour, average downtime, etc.?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been through experiments or experiences like that. We generally would take benchmarking with a grain of salt from any OEM that provided it to us. You'll be hard pressed to get an actual benchmark from generally any manufacturer, as they're held to that benchmark should they publish it. A lot of them generally are around 10 to 12,000 hour major components and 6,000 hours for half-life components such as turbos, alternator starters, fuel injectors, things like that. So what we had done is we took worldwide data, and Brent, like I said, this is a great question. The only caveat is what does your data look like? Are you able to pull data from all your members to get an average operating hour, average downtime, etc.? That's a question I have for you. Yeah, what we had done is, things said 10,000 hours, but when we looked at worldwide data, we know that engine can make 14,000 hours based on oil sampling. We know that those turbochargers were making 8,000 or 9,000 hours based on oil sampling as well. So if you have a good, robust sampling process, you should be able to determine that. If you have an excellent data lake source, you can pull all that information together. That's if you're sharing data and you're able to do that. Now, another thing that you can look at as well, there's a lot of telematics systems on equipment, light passenger vehicles, all that kind of stuff today. That information is yours, whether it's being managed by a dealer or not. So, you could pull all that together as well and begin to look at what a benchmark study looks like. So you can look at what idle time is, you can look at, downtime, how often is that equipment running versus actually working, and then you can look at any kind of repair and maintenance that you put in as well. So the nice thing about those tele systems that are out there is you can enter into all your maintenance aspects into that and then keep like a really good log of what it is you're doing to all your equipment. So yes, it can be done if you have a great data lake and somebody willing to look at that.
Okay, great. The other question we have is, how do you incorporate fuel economy improvements into RFPs and into the structured contracts that we do?
Yeah, that's another good one, Brent. So, I can speak to, I guess, my experience with Caterpillar. I knew that they had a fuel improvement guarantee, and if they didn't meet that fuel improvement guarantee, they actually issued credits to the member in question. So, there's key factors that go into fuel economy. If you can guarantee that a piece of equipment was operated in this fashion 100% of the time, you'd probably get a fuel guarantee, but it's pretty challenging to get those operational techniques in place and have everybody the same piece of equipment all the time. But like I mentioned, from the Caterpillar side of things, you can definitely get that buyback guarantee or fuel guarantee. And, I know just for the RMA alone, there was about $1 million in credits that were issued from Caterpillar to the various members in Alberta in order to offset that.
Okay, tying into the same question.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, tying into that question, the same member had another secondary question that said, are you seeing an increase in customers purchasing extended warranty coverage?
I would say there's an increase in duration. I would say that there's a good chance that probably extended warranty coverage is decreasing. Equipment is quite robust these days, so you're able to run that piece of equipment in that fashion. You've got your standard manufacturer warranty for a certain period of time, and then I guess at that point it's your comfort level. So I've seen things where dealerships are actually self-insuring and not buying the one from the manufacturer anymore. I've seen some good data on how often the warranties are used, and quite frankly, they're not quite high. But at the same time, it's risk mitigation, right? So do you look at, are you willing to roll the dice and think you can make it through that entire duration without anything happening, or do you want that warranty to mitigate your risk is the other question. So, I personally feel with a robust maintenance strategy, a little bit of warranty in place, maybe not as in-depth as we go on the premier side to cover everything, maybe powertrain and hydraulics, you'd be pretty better off, but once you get your tolerance for risk.
Okay, we have another question. Does LAS have an RFP that incorporates total cost of ownership as evaluation criteria that they can distribute to municipalities?
I haven't seen one on our side yet. I don't know if Tanner or Ainsley could speak to that better. We are trying to work that into our current RFPs right now. Nigel Gamester writes a lot of them for us over at RMA. I'm sure you guys are all quite familiar with Nigel as well. But yeah, that's one of the things that we continue to work with our vendors on, just to get that factor in there. Because like I say, purchase price is one thing, but you got to look at a holistic view. So getting there, not quite there yet.
Yep. I can touch on that too from the LAS side. We don't offer help with doing your own RFPs, essentially. We've got the group buying program set up to help eliminate that as much as possible through shared RFPs that we put together. But if a municipality wants to put together its own, unfortunately, you're on your own with that one.
Okay, it looks like we have another question that just came through. Does your group buying program use total cost of ownership as a valuation criteria?
So yeah, it's pretty similar to the last question we had.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, we're working towards that. I wouldn't say we have that capability today. Definitely more on anything with wheels, you're probably going to be able to get that criteria, but as it relates to softwares and hardware and stuff like that, no, I would say no. Like I say, we're always working towards that.
Okay.
These are great questions, everybody.
Yeah, if there's any more, keep them coming. We do have a bit of more time here. If anybody has anything else to add.
I do have 20 years in the dealership industry. If anybody wants secrets, now's the time.
Yeah, it's very specific to each purchase, like the total cost of ownership. And then like Sourcewell also incorporates that into the RFPs that we do with them. That's correct, Jesse?
That's correct, but they don't actually provide what the total cost of ownership would look like. It's evaluation criteria, but they don't give you the actual end number.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if there's any other questions. So if that's it, we can wrap things up, and I'll pass this back to Tanner.
Awesome for your time, everybody, today.
Yep. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks Jesse and Ainsley for helping out. The three of us will stick around for a couple more minutes just in case any other questions come in. But if not, thanks everybody and have a good rest of your week. Oh, have one more come in.
Oh. Yeah, it looks like are the total cost of ownership analysis available to review from LIS vendor selection?
Once again, you have to request that total cost of ownership or provide, I guess maybe do a little bit of analysis on your own. So, and, you know, anytime you're making a capital purchase, you can request that and you can review it from a salesperson, even if they are just quoting you on something that's been pre-tendered Sourcewell already. You have a right to read that. So it's not going to be put to you automatically, at least not today. We're continue to work towards that, but it can be requested through your sales personnel at that time.
Great. I don't know if there's any other questions that have come through, but yeah, if you guys do have any other questions after this webinar, feel free to reach out to Tanner or myself, and we can always refer this to Jesse. So we do encourage questions and can help you out in this matter. So I don't think there's any other questions. Oh, one more just came through. So a copy of, this recording will be provided to attendees. So, and yeah, as Tanner mentioned, this will be, this has been recorded. So we will be sending this out, I believe, in the next couple days, Tanner?
Yep, either this afternoon or tomorrow.
Great.
All right, I think we will wrap it up there. Thanks again, everybody, and we'll catch you at the next one.